What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for April 10th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Thursday edition of the podcast. As we always do, let's go into some quick housekeeping. Just a reminder that Saturday and Sunday I will be broadcasting from the mountains up in Hazleton, PA. So you'll still get the weekend episodes, just will be a different background. You may have some deer popping in, maybe a bear, who knows? But just a quick reminder of that. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram, at Philly Jimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. Continue to spread the word as we go and try to grow this thing. And if you are a new listener, I'm going to be better at welcoming you. But welcome if you are a new listener here. Also, don't forget, tomorrow we spend Fridays with AI, where we ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. Tomorrow we talked with AI about the 1964 Phillies, kind of a 64 Phillies theme tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. It's an interesting one. I kind of like this one. But Fridays with AI tomorrow, only on this day in Philly sports history. And then be sure to check out my friend Lenny Wagner and buy his book, Playing with the Best, One Man's Journey Through the Golden Age of Sports, the story of Walter French. All the information you need is in the description. We spent last week talking with Lenny about Walter's life and career. Just an amazing, amazing thing. The book, though, like I said, if you are a history person, you're going to love this book. So go buy Playing with the Best, One Man's Journey Through the Golden Age of Sports. Available wherever you get your books as well as on Audible. All right, so Phillies won yesterday, setting up the rubber match tonight. However, it was a weird game. It wasn't pretty. It was weird. Taijuan Walker struggled, but was good. Still hasn't given up a run this year. Went 4 2/3. Loaded the bases twice, but got out of the jams. No runs. Hey, if that's what we get from our fifth starter, I'll take it. The bullpen, up and down. Still some question marks with that. Alvarado loves to make it interesting. That's why I think he's going to end up being the closer this year. Ended up getting the save and closed it out. Bryson, an absolute bomb. Trey Turner with his first home run of the season. Played a little bit of small ball. But like I said, it was just a weird game. It wasn't pretty. Counts in the wins. Bohm 0 for 5 with 4 Ks. Brandon Marsh didn't get a hit again. So it was a very up and down, weird game. But they all count in the standings. And one thing with this team so far early in the season, it's only 11 games, but it's very businesslike. And I don't know if that is by design, where they're just like, screw it, this is what we're doing, or if it's something big. I don't know, but I appreciate the fact that it's very businesslike with that. All right, we went in, got the win, on to the next game. They're back at it tonight. Jesus Luzardo on the mound for the Phils. Looking to see him continue his good start so far with the Phils. But that does lead to today's question of the day. Some concerns with this team early on, and we kind of thought that that's what it was going to be. I still think they're going to make a bigger trade deadline move. There's going to be some desperation with this team, and maybe that's the problem with these two guys. But what's the biggest liability on this team right now? Brandon Marsh, Bohm, or the bullpen? And I think you have your horses in the bullpen, but everybody else is a big question mark. Marsh hasn't done anything. I don't think he has a hit in April yet. Bohm, I don't know what his deal is. I would love to see them maybe sit him down for a couple games and put in Edmundo Sosa. But in your opinion, what is the biggest liability right now on this team? Is it Marsh, Bohmer, or the bullpen? 267-495-8531 is the Back to the Future voice and text line. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off your chest, hit me up on social media too. Another good discussion yesterday on Facebook. And just a reminder that there are highlights and clips and things like that on my social media. So be sure to follow there. But the question of the day, what is the biggest liability right now? Is it Brandon Marsh, Bohm, or the bullpen? Would not mind seeing Johan Rojas and Edmundo Sosa get more regular playing time. But let me know your thoughts on that, as Jesus Luzardo takes the mound tonight for the Phillies as they look to take their 4th straight series to open the season. All right, winter sports update. It was an interesting one. Flyers beat the Rangers 8-5 yesterday. Tyson Forrester with the hat trick really hurt their playoff standings, or lottery standings, I should say. They're tied now with Boston for the 4th pick with 3 games left. Again, not that concerned with the Flyers. It's more of a big deal for the Sixers because the Flyers have 3 first-round picks. It's just a matter of where those picks are going to be. A ton of draft capital, but Flyers with the 8-5 win over the Rangers. Tyson Forrester with his first career hat trick, and then the Sixers. Granted, they were playing the worst team in the league. Finally snapped that 12-game losing streak, 122-103 against the Wizards. They're currently up 2.5 games now on the Nets for the 5th spot. They're 2.5 back of the 4th spot with 2 games left. So it's going to be dicey, but they will clinch that 5th spot in the lottery with 1 loss in their next 2 games. I think they play the Bulls and maybe Toronto. So it's within reach. And again, then it's all up to the ping pong balls or however the NBA does their lottery. And as I told you what I want to see. I want to see this is a big deal. And I want to see guys like watching it like it's the Pennsylvania lottery. But they'll never do it because I still think the NBA is shady with that. But we'll continue to monitor that. 2 games left for the Sixers. 3 games left for the Flyers, and then we're out of our misery. Now, I did see a stat this morning on Twitter from Boop Stats. Also, John Clark from NBC 10 posted it as well from Boop Stats. But this is only the 2nd time in Philly sports history that the Phillies, Sixers, and Flyers all won on the road on the same day. Kind of amazing that that's only happened 2 times in history, and that was back in 2003. And even more incredible, it's only the 3rd time in Philly sports history that 3 of our 4 teams won games on the road. Back in 1982, the day after Christmas, the Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers all won on the road. So just one of those rare, crazy things that happen in Philly sports that I thought was interesting. The Union made some news yesterday, traded their all-time leading goal scorer, Daniel Gazdag, for some cash. And I think it's all part of a plan that they have. But, man, especially with the surprising start that they've been on this year to trade possibly your best player for cash. He's their all-time leading goal scorer and one of the best players in team history. Daniel Gazdag is gone. But there is a plan in place. They're sticking to the plan. I forget what the title is, but the GM or whatever of the Union, he's got a plan and he's sticking to it. So we'll see how that translates onto the field. Be sure to check out my boys at the Clashing Conferences podcast. Lots of great things going on with their sports fan network. Go to clashingconferences.com to see how you can get involved, what they have to offer. Check out their podcast as well, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. But Steven and the crew over there doing great things at the Clashing Conferences. So go to clashingconferences.com for more details and information. And then, of course, you know what I'm going to say next. Go check out Philly Goat. I told you, going to be up with some bourbon and whiskey drinkers this weekend. Wish I had those Phillies rocks glass with the Fanatic and the Major League Baseball logo on it. Go check them out. They had the new F Around and Find Out shirts. There's a new golf shirt available with the Philly Goat logo. Tons of Phillies gear. So go to Philly Goat, check out what they have to offer. And I keep saying, scroll through the site because sometimes things get pushed to the bottom of the page and they have a ton of great gear. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com. Promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. All right, we're going to stick with the Phils today and go back to 1971. And on this day in 1971, the Phillies beat the Expos 4-1 in the home opener and the first ever game at Veterans Stadium. Now, before it was a dump, the Vet was actually a state-of-the-art stadium. Yes, it was part of the cookie cutters that came out in the 70s, the multi-purpose stadiums. but it was state-of-the-art, had a lot of the bells and whistles that Connie Mack Stadium just did not have. So the Vet opened on this day in 1971. First ball was dropped from a helicopter from high above the stadium. Catcher Mike Ryan made the catch, which pretty impressive, actually, if you think about how high a stadium is, dropping it from a helicopter, and he was able to make the catch. 55,352 fans turned out, and if you remember from yesterday, that's the actual number of people that came into the stadium. It was the largest baseball crowd in the history of Pennsylvania at the time. 39-year-old Jim Bunning took the mound for the Phillies and got the win. He went 7 1/3, struck out 4. Larry Bowa got the first hit. Don Money, the first home run. In a game that was played in 47-degree temperatures, it was definitely a chilly one at the Vet. You're probably wondering some of the other firsts that happened in the game. I'm not going to bore you with first stolen base, first double play, strikeout, things like that. I'm going to get to the things that Philly fans really want to hear. The first boo came before the game even started, and that was when General Manager John Quinn was introduced in a pregame intro. Sometimes Philly fans are just going to be Philly fans. First cheer of the game, in true Philly fashion, was not for the play on the field. It was for when the sun peeked out through the clouds. The crowd gave a huge roar of approval for the sun coming out on a cold day. And like I said, sometimes Philly fans are just going to Philly fan. But on this day in 1971, Phillies beat the Expos 4-1 in the first ever baseball game played at Veterans Stadium. Pennsylvania record crowd on hand. Larry Bowa with the first hit at the Vet. First boo, General Manager John Quinn. Those are the things we're interested in. We will recap. Let's recap yesterday's question of the day, and it was a good one. We were talking about our missing rings, and we were talking about Charles Barkley. And I asked you, who is the best player in Philly to not win a title? And I said it comes down to really Charles Barkley or Brian Dawkins. However, this did spark a discussion on Facebook, in part due to the fact that the way I worded the question, I didn't word it the way I just said it there. Lots of people writing in votes for Reggie White. Now, I didn't include Reggie White on this list because he did win a Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers. However, if you're talking strictly Philadelphia sports careers, the answer is Reggie White. Best player that played in Philly and did not win a title in Philly. That's the key. It's all about semantics there. I think it's Reggie White, and it's not even close. However, if you talk about just guys that never won a title and pretty much are staples and legends in Philly, it comes down to Brian Dawkins and Charles Barkley. Those are the two. 50% of you said Brian Dawkins. The rest were split between Reggie and Charles Barkley. I'm going to have to disagree again. I've been doing this a lot with the question of the day. I think it's Charles Barkley. Barkley is the best player in NBA history to not win a title. He's the best player in Philly sports history to not win a title. Only because, like I said, Reggie White won that game or won that title in Green Bay. But lots of folks were saying that Dawkins was more beloved. He played longer in Philly. All of that is true. But I think if you're talking talent, and this is not to take a shot or slight Brian Dawkins in any way, Brian Dawkins is one of the better players in NFL history. I'm not saying that. But Barkley is considered the best player in NBA history to not win a title. So that's why I'm going Barkley. But lots of good debate on that. Shame on me for not wording it correctly on Facebook and even sparking the Reggie White conversation. We will talk about Reggie later in the month of April. But thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. Today's question, though, what's the biggest liability for the Phillies right now? Is it Brandon Marsh, Alec Bohm, or the bullpen? 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. Get your answers in. Get that, anything else Philly sports related off of your chest. But we are going to continue with our missing ring spotlight. And we're going to stick with a Phillies theme today. Richie Ashburn, one of the most beloved Phillies of all time. And most of the people that are probably listening to this know Richie as Whitey Ashburn, the beloved announcer of 35 years with the Phillies, Harry Kalas's right-hand man, the guy that Ashburn Alley is named after. But before he retired and got into broadcasting, he's one of the all-time great Phillies players, as well as a Major League Baseball Hall of Famer. He's third all-time on the Phillies in games, third all-time in hits, four-time All-Star, two-time batting champion, all with the Phillies. His best chance to win a title probably was 1950, though, where the Phillies surprised everyone. The Whiz Kids won the National League pennant and then got swept by the Yankees in the World Series. I always think, and we talk about this in September, or I think it's August or September, whenever the call-up happened, but they lost their best starter, or their second best starting pitcher that year, due to the Korean War. And that really, I think, is what hurt the Phillies, especially in the World Series. Now, 3 of those 4 games in the World Series were one-run games. However, that last game, who knows what would have happened if the Phillies had their full starters. It just, and Richie Ashburn played well that season. They were a young team, and the hopes were high, but losing Curt Simmons to the Korean War really hurt that team, because he was on his way to win 20 games when he got the call that he was activated from the National Reserve, and his crew was going over to the Korean War. But because you never know really how much that dynamic changes everything, especially because it was such a fun summer for Philadelphia. But Richie never got close to the World Series again. That 1950 team, you could say, caught lightning in a bottle, but hopes were high. But the rest of Richie Ashburn's career with the Phillies, he was battling the rise of like the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Milwaukee Braves, the New York Giants. Those were the 3 teams that won the pennant the rest of the years that Richie was in Philly. So today's missing rings is Richie Ashburn. Who knows what would have happened in 1950 if Curt Simmons did not get drafted into the Korean War. They had Robin Roberts was the ace of the staff, but a young Curt Simmons really had a breakout year and was well on his way to 20 games. And back then, wins for a pitcher were a much bigger stat than what they are now. But for Curt to be on his way to 20 games, it really was a big void that was hard to fill for the Phillies. And they really relied on Robin Roberts, especially down the stretch in the World Series. But Richie Ashburn played in a World Series, never got close again. Did have the opportunity to call as an announcer. I guess it was on the radio at the time because of the Major League Baseball rules, but 1980, 83, and 93, he did get to call as an announcer the Phillies, but as a player, never won one, and he is today's missing rings spotlight. On this day in 1971, Veterans Stadium opened, Phillies beating the Expos 4-1. All of the pomp and circumstance you would expect on a cold day, and Philly fans came out in full force, 55,000 plus, setting a Pennsylvania baseball attendance record, and then they promptly booed the general manager for the construction of the team. Gotta love our fathers and grandfathers starting the tradition back then, even at the opening of the state-of-the-art. And again, the Vet became a dump over the course of its 30 years or whatever, but at the time, it was one hell of a stadium. And it opened on this day in 1971. We'll continue to monitor the Sixers and Flyers lottery standings, as well as recap the rubber match of the Phillies Braves. Do not forget, tomorrow, Fridays with AI, we have a little 1964 Phillies vibe to it, and you may be surprised with what AI thinks would have happened. So stay tuned for that tomorrow morning. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for April 10th, 2025. My name's Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Thursday, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.